Something impossible was found beneath Pearl Harbor that changed everything we thought we knew about that fateful day. In November 2023, workers building a new visitor center at Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam hit something strange. 3.8 meters underground, their equipment stopped dead. What they found should not have been there at all. Ground-penetrating radar showed a sealed room buried deep below. The chamber measured roughly 9 by 6 meters with concrete walls 60 centimeters thick. No blueprints mentioned this structure. No records showed it existed. On December 4th, engineers cut through the sealed entrance and stepped inside. What they discovered inside that concrete tomb froze everyone in place. The chamber was a complete command post filled with old naval equipment. Classified documents covered the desk and walls. And sitting at that desk was a skeleton in full U.S. Navy dress uniform. The identification tags told them who this was. CD RJT Morrison, USNO 278432, Commander James Thomas Morrison. Here's what made this discovery so disturbing. Morrison had been listed as missing since December 8, 1941. That was one day after Pearl Harbor was attacked. His personnel file said almost nothing about how he vanished. Naval records showed he commanded a signals intelligence unit that monitored Japanese communications somewhere on Oahu, but every document about his facility's location had been blacked out. His death certificate from 1946 said presumed killed during enemy action, remains unrecovered. So why was Commander Morrison sealed inside an underground chamber, and what did those classified documents reveal about his final hours? If you want to know the truth, please stay with us. You're welcome to leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. We read every single one. If you find value in these forgotten histories, a like helps us continue this work. And if you'd like to follow future investigations into mysteries like this, you may consider subscribing. Now, let's go back to December 1941 and uncover what really happened. The concrete chamber beneath Pearl Harbor had stayed sealed and untouched for 82 years. James Morrison was born in 1904 in Portland, Oregon. His family had served in the Navy for 3 generations. He graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy in 1926, finishing in the top quarter of his class. He showed special talent in communications and cryptography. His early Navy career focused entirely on signals intelligence. He worked at naval radio stations in the Philippines and California. There he learned how to intercept and analyze foreign military communications. By 1938, he had earned the rank of lieutenant commander and worked at Navy Department headquarters in Washington. He helped create protocols for the service's growing signals intelligence operations. The relationship between the United States and Japan got worse throughout 1940 and 1941. This created desperate need for intelligence about Japanese military plans. The U.S. Navy ran several signals intelligence stations across the Pacific. They intercepted Japanese naval radio traffic and tried to decrypt coded messages. Station HYPO in Hawaii, Station CAST in the Philippines, and Station Nagat in Washington worked together, sharing intercepts and code-breaking efforts. But these well-known facilities were only part of America's intelligence network. Several smaller, highly classified listening posts operated in complete secrecy. Only a handful of senior officers knew they existed. Their locations were deliberately hidden in official records. Morrison got orders to Hawaii in March 1941 and promotion to commander in June. His assignment was to establish and direct one of these secret listening posts. It was called Station Hotel and Internal Communications, but never officially acknowledged in public records. The facility's job focused specifically on intercepting and analyzing transmissions from Japanese naval units in the Marshall Islands and Caroline Islands. Japan controlled these territories after World War I, and they were suspected of hiding military preparations. Station Hotel operated separately from Station HYPO at Pearl Harbor. It reported directly to the Office of Naval Intelligence in Washington rather than through Pacific Fleet channels. The importance of signals intelligence in late 1941 cannot be overstated. American codebreakers had achieved some success breaking Japanese diplomatic codes, the famous Purple Cipher. But Japanese naval codes remained mostly unbreakable. Even when messages could not be decrypted, traffic analysis provided valuable intelligence. The volume, timing, origin, and destination of radio transmissions revealed patterns of activity that skilled analysts could interpret. Morrison's unit tracked Japanese naval communications for signs of unusual activity that might show preparation for military operations. The work required constant monitoring, careful recording, and quick analysis. All of it was done under strict security rules that prevented discussing the work even with other naval personnel. The island of Oahu in 1941 presented both benefits and problems for signals intelligence operations. The island's location in the Central Pacific gave excellent reception of radio signals from across the region. Good radio reception required tall antennas, but obvious antenna arrays attracted unwanted attention. Morrison's solution, according to bits and pieces in declassified documents, involved putting his facility underground. Antennas were disguised as palm trees and carefully placed to avoid drawing notice from either casual observers or foreign intelligence agents known to operate on the island. The final week of November 1941 brought increasing tension throughout the Pacific Fleet. On November 24th, Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Harold Stark sent a message to Pacific Fleet Commander Admiral Husband Kimmel. The message warned that negotiations with Japan appear to be terminated. It advised that a surprise aggressive movement in any direction, including attack on Philippines or Guam, is a possibility. Morrison's unit intensified its monitoring with personnel working extra shifts to ensure continuous coverage of all relevant Japanese naval radio frequencies. Traffic analysis showed unusual patterns. A big increase in message volume combined with new call signs that made tracking specific units harder then came. December 6, 1941. At approximately 1400 hours, Morrison's unit intercepted a series of transmissions coming from the direction of the Marshall Islands. According to a partially destroyed message log recovered from the sealed chamber, the intercept showed characteristics consistent with air-to-ship communications rather than the standard ship-to-ship traffic his unit normally monitored. The frequency, message format, and transmission timing differed from typical Japanese naval communications patterns. Morrison's analysis, handwritten on the log sheet, noted possible carrier air group conducting exercises or operational deployment. Concentration of transmissions suggests multiple aircraft coordinating with surface units. Morrison tried to report his findings to Naval Intelligence Headquarters in Washington via encrypted teletype at 1620 hours on December 6th. But did Washington ever receive his urgent warning? The transmission log showed the message was sent, but nothing indicated Washington acknowledged receipt. Morrison sent a second message at 1845 hours. This time he also copied Station HYPO at Pearl Harbor. Again, no acknowledgement appeared in the logs. A third attempt at 2130 hours produced the same result. The lack of response was strange but not completely unusual. Communications problems happened regularly. Morrison had no way to know whether his messages were being received and simply not acknowledged or failing to reach their destinations entirely. The morning of December 7th started like any other day at Morrison's facility. Duty logs showed normal watch rotations with personnel monitoring assigned, frequencies and recording, intercepts according to standard procedures. At 0702 hours, operators detected what appeared to be tactical radio transmissions on frequencies not previously linked with Japanese naval operations. The signal characteristics told a chilling story. Short duration, high power, frequency hopping pattern. This suggested aviation communications during active operations. At 0715 hours, operators reported hearing English language transmissions on U.S. military frequencies describing aircraft approaching Oahu from the north. The facility's location, underground and physically separated from main Pearl Harbor installations, meant Morrison's unit received no warning of the attack until it was already happening. At 0758 hours, according to the final entry in the duty log, Morrison ordered all personnel to emergency stations and attempted to establish communication with Pacific Fleet Headquarters. The log entry noted attack in progress, attempting to alert all stations unable to raise back Will maintain monitoring and recording. That entry, written in Morrison's distinctive handwriting, was the last operational record his unit produced. Navy casualty accounting procedures in the chaotic aftermath of December 7th struggled to track personnel across Pearl Harbor's multiple installations. The attack killed 2,403 Americans and wounded 1,178 more. Initial casualty lists focused on personnel at visible locations: battleships, airfields, barracks. Smaller, isolated facilities received attention only after the immediate crisis passed, when Navy administrators tried to verify Morrison's status on December 8th. They hit a wall. They discovered that his duty station's location was classified at a level requiring special clearance to access. The administrative officer who inquired lacked sufficient clearance. He could only determine that Morrison commanded a classified signals intelligence facility somewhere on Oahu. Attempts to locate Morrison or contact his unit produced no results. Telephone lines to the facility, assuming they existed, either did not respond or the numbers were not recorded in accessible files. Radio communication attempts received no acknowledgement. On December 9th, a search party tried to locate the facility using the limited information available in classified files. The search team, led by a lieutenant commander from Naval Intelligence, spent 2 days checking possible locations but found nothing. The team's report, declassified in 1995, concluded that CDR Morrison's facility cannot be located using available information. Personnel assigned to station are unaccounted for. Recommend expanded search with additional cleared personnel. Morrison's wife, Eleanor, received notification on December 12th that her husband was missing and presumed killed in the attack. The telegram provided no specifics about his location or duties. It stated only that he was performing classified duties during the attack on Pearl Harbor and has not been accounted for. Eleanor, who had lived with James in Navy housing near Honolulu, knew almost nothing about her husband's work beyond that it involved communications and required unusual working hours. Her questions to Navy officials produced sympathetic responses but no additional information. Security regulations prevented disclosing details about Morrison's assignment, even to his widow. The official account of Morrison's death, finalized in 1946 when the Navy declared him legally dead, listed him among personnel killed during the attack whose remains were not recovered or could not be identified. This category included individuals known to have been aboard ships that sank, in buildings that were destroyed, or otherwise present at locations where casualties occurred but whose bodies could not be individually accounted for. Morrison's inclusion in this category was administratively convenient but factually questionable. No one actually knew where he had been during the attack or what had happened to him. 3 different theories emerged among the handful of naval intelligence officers aware of Morrison's actual assignment. The first proposed that Morrison's facility had been directly hit during the attack, either by bombs or by crashing aircraft, and completely destroyed. This theory explained his disappearance but seemed unlikely. No reports documented unexplained damage to any area where his facility might plausibly have been located. The second theory suggested Morrison and his personnel had been killed while attempting to evacuate their facility and reach safety during the attack. The third, mentioned in a 1945 internal memo, suggested that Morrison might have been killed by friendly fire. Panicked American forces shooting at anything that moved during and after the attack. Between 1946 and 2000, Morrison's name appeared in exactly 4 historical works about Pearl Harbor. Each mention consisted of a single sentence listing him among officers killed in the attack. None provided details about his assignment or the circumstances of his death because that information remained classified. The Navy's institutional reluctance to discuss signals intelligence operations, particularly those that failed to prevent surprise attacks, meant that facilities like Station Hotel remained officially unacknowledged for decades. After they ceased operation, Eleanor Morrison moved to California in 1946 and remarried in 1950. She spoke rarely about her first husband, telling her second family only that James had been a Navy officer killed at Pearl Harbor. She died in 1987 without learning what had actually happened. The Morrisons had no children. James's extended family gradually lost interest in pursuing details about his death. His brother, who had served in the Army during the war, made several attempts in the 1950s to obtain information, but encountered the same security restrictions that had frustrated Eleanor. Declassification of World War II intelligence documents accelerated in the 1990s, as records reached the 50-year mark that made them eligible for public release. However, the declassification process often involved extensive redactions, and some documents were withheld entirely. References to Station Hotel appeared in several declassified documents, but always with its location redacted. A 1993 history of Navy signals intelligence, written by a cleared historian with access to classified files, included 2 paragraphs about a small signals intelligence facility on Oahu that ceased operations on December 7, 1941, but provided no specifics about its personnel or fate. The truth remained buried, literally and figuratively, for another 30 years. But how did Morrison's underground tomb remain hidden for over 80 years? Pearl Harbor underwent continuous development throughout the post-war decades, with construction projects regularly uncovering unexploded ordnance, aircraft debris, and other remnants of the 1941 attack. However, these discoveries occurred in areas known to have been targeted during the raid. The region where Morrison's chamber was eventually discovered had been considered peripheral to the attack, far enough from the main naval base that construction projects proceeded without the extensive archaeological scrutiny applied to more sensitive areas. Institutional memory about classified facilities from 1941 had faded by the 1990s. Construction planning relied on modern blueprints rather than historical records. The National Security Agency, which inherited the Navy's signals intelligence mission after its establishment in 1952, maintained classified histories of predecessor organizations. These histories included information about Station Hotel, but access was restricted to NSA personnel with operational need to know. The agency's historians were aware that Morrison's facility had ceased operations on December 7, 1941, but the classified files apparently contained no information about what happened to the facility's personnel or why the installation could not be located after the attack. The 2023 construction project originated from a joint base, Pearl Harbor Hickam modernization program designed to upgrade visitor facilities and improve security screening. The chosen site, an area north of the main harbor facilities, appeared ideal. Relatively undeveloped land with good access to existing roads and utilities. Preliminary surveys conducted in 2022 showed no historical structures or archaeological sensitivity. Construction permits were approved in August 2023. An excavation began November 15th. Heavy equipment operators noticed unusual soil resistance on November 28th when excavating reached approximately 3.5 meters depth. The operator, Michael Chun, a civilian contractor with 15 years' experience on military construction projects, recognized that the resistance pattern suggested concrete rather than rock. He stopped excavation and notified the site supervisor, who contacted the base's public works department. An engineer arrived that afternoon and confirmed the presence of a concrete structure that did not appear on any available blueprints. The base's historical preservation officer, Dr. Sarah Kaloha, arrived on November 29th to assess the discovery. She immediately recognized the potential historical significance. A World War II-era structure in this location could contain unexploded ordnance, classified materials, or other sensitive items. She ordered a complete excavation halt pending further investigation. Dr. Kaloha contacted Naval History and Heritage Command in Washington, requesting guidance on how to proceed. Simultaneously, she initiated research in base. archives to determine what might have been. Built at this location in 1941, ground. Penetrating radar surveys conducted December. First to second revealed the structures. Full extent, a rectangular chamber with walls approximately 60 centimeters thick, ceiling and floor of similar construction, and no obvious entrance. The radar signatures suggested the chamber was sealed. No openings connected it to the surface. An antenna array consisting of metal cables embedded in what appeared to be the original surface level extended from the chamber in multiple directions. The antenna configuration matched designs used for long-range radio reception in the 1940s. Dr. Kaloa's archival research produced a breakthrough. On December 3rd, a 1941 construction log from the Naval Public Works Office, previously overlooked because it dealt with classified facilities and had been filed separately from main construction records. Referenced Project Hotel, Signals Intelligence Facility. Location classified, construction completion October 1941. Final security sealing pending. The log included a project number that Kaloha Cross, referenced with newly declassified Office of Naval. Intelligence files. This revealed that Project Hotel was Commander Morrison's facility. The discoveries. Implications became immediately clear. This was not merely a historical artifact. It was potentially a tomb containing the remains of American servicemen who had been missing for 82 years. It might also contain classified materials that, despite their age, could still be sensitive. The decision on how to proceed required coordination between multiple agencies. Naval History and Heritage Command, the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, Naval Criminal Investigative Service, and the National Security Agency all had jurisdictional interests. Conference calls on December 3rd established a protocol. NCIS would supervise the chamber's opening to ensure proper evidence handling. DPA personnel would be present to manage any human remains. NSA representatives would assess and secure any classified materials. The breach was scheduled for December 4th at 800 hours. A specialized team using diamond-tipped cutting tools worked for nearly 3 hours to create an opening in the chamber's wall. The concrete's thickness and reinforcement exceeded initial estimates. When the opening was finally large enough, air quality sensors were inserted first. The atmosphere inside showed normal oxygen levels but elevated carbon dioxide, consistent with a sealed space. At 10:47 hours, the first team member entered the chamber. Emergency lighting revealed a scene frozen in time. The chamber contained 4 rooms: a main operations room with radio equipment and desks, a small communications room with teletype machines, a storage area with supplies, and a sealed vault containing documents and equipment. In the main operations room, seated at the primary desk, was the skeleton in naval dress uniform. The identification tags confirmed this was Commander Morrison. His skeletal remains sat upright in a chair, one hand resting on the desk beside a logbook, the other near a telephone handset. 3 other skeletons in enlisted uniforms were found at different stations. Throughout the facility, the scene suggested these men had remained at their posts until the very end. Equipment throughout the chamber showed signs of having been in operation when power failed. Radio receivers were tuned to specific frequencies. Recording devices contained partially completed logs. The teletype machine in the communications room had a message still loaded in its mechanism, but the most disturbing discovery was in the vault. Stacks of intercept logs, analysis reports, and transmission records documented the unit's activities from March 1941 through December 7th. The final entries, dated December 7th and written in Morrison's handwriting, described the attack as it unfolded and detailed the unit's desperate attempts to communicate warnings. A separate folder, marked with Morrison's personal seal, contained a handwritten letter. The letter was addressed to Naval Intelligence Headquarters and dated December 7th, 1941, 14:30 hours. More than 6 hours after the attack began, Morrison and his men were still alive inside their sealed tomb. Trying to figure out why no one had come to help them. What that letter revealed would change everything we thought we knew about Pearl Harbor. Morrison's letter explained everything, but the physical evidence told an even darker story. The decision to breach the chamber required approval from multiple authorities. Base Command, Naval History and Heritage Command, the FBI because it might contain classified materials, and NCIS because it might be a crime scene. Approvals came through on December 4th with strict protocols. A team of archaeologists, forensic specialists, and security personnel would conduct the breach and initial documentation. On December 4th at 1400 hours, engineers using diamond-tipped cutting tools drilled through the chamber ceiling. They created an opening large enough to lower cameras and eventually personnel. The first camera views showed a remarkably preserved interior. The sealed environment had protected everything from weather and moisture. Though temperature fluctuations over 8 decades had caused some deterioration of organic materials, what they saw inside made everyone stop breathing. A central desk, multiple equipment racks holding radio receivers and recording devices, filing cabinets, and a human skeleton seated at the desk in a position suggesting the individual had died while working. The skeleton wore a U.S. Navy officer's dress uniform with rank insignia and ribbons. Visible despite fabric deterioration, forensic archaeologists descended into the chamber on December 5th, establishing photographic and measurement protocols. Before disturbing any items, the skeleton at the central desk received priority attention. The remains showed no evidence of trauma. No broken bones. No bullet holes in the skull. No signs of violent death. The uniform's condition, combined with the body's position, suggested the individual had died suddenly while seated at work. Identification. Tags recovered from the uniform confirmed the remains as Commander James Morrison, pathological. Examination of the skeletal remains occurred at the Joint POW MIA, Accounting Command Laboratory at Joint Base Pearl Harbor, Hickam. Forensic anthropologist Dr. James Patterson noted several significant findings. First, the bones showed no trauma consistent with explosion, crushing, or other violent death. Second, analysis of bone chemistry suggested death had occurred in an environment with limited oxygen. Third, examination of the skull and teeth revealed Morrison's identity matched his Naval Academy dental records. The combination of findings pointed toward asphyxiation as the cause of death. Environmental analysis of the sealed chamber provided crucial context. Air samples extracted before the chamber was fully opened showed carbon dioxide levels of approximately 7%, far above the normal atmospheric concentration of 0.04%. Oxygen levels measured 14%, below the 21% normal concentration. These readings, combined with the chamber's sealed nature, indicated something horrifying. Morrison and anyone else in the chamber, when it was sealed, had gradually consumed the available oxygen and accumulated carbon dioxide until the atmosphere could no longer sustain life. Death from asphyxiation in such conditions would occur over several hours, producing symptoms including confusion, drowsiness, and eventually unconsciousness. Documents recovered from the chamber filled critical gaps in the historical record. Morrison's personal log, found in a drawer of the central desk, contained entries from December 7th and 8th, 1941. The December 7th entries described the attack and his unit's response. The December 8th entries, increasingly disjointed and difficult to read, described his attempts to exit the facility. The log's final entry, dated December 8th at what appeared to be 2,330 hours, though the handwriting was barely legible. Read air getting bad, can't find emergency release. This facility was supposed to have, the sentence ended incomplete. Examination of the chambers. Design revealed a catastrophic flaw. The facility had been constructed with an entrance tunnel that could be sealed in case of enemy attack or other emergency. The sealing mechanism, located outside the main chamber, was designed to be operated from either inside or outside. However, the internal release mechanism A large wheel valve that should have been mounted on the wall near the entrance was missing. Inspection of the wall mounting points showed that the valve had been removed deliberately. Bolt holes where it should have been attached showed tool marks consistent with DISASSEMBLY. Construction records provided an explanation for the missing valve. A November 1941 inspection report noted that the emergency release mechanism had been removed for repair and recalibration on November 25, 1941. The work order indicated the valve would be reinstalled by December 15th after the repair facility in San Francisco completed modifications. The attack on December 7th occurred before the valve's return. Morrison had been sealed in a facility without a functioning internal emergency release. The sequence of events became clear through integration of multiple evidence sources. On December 7th, Morrison and his personnel maintained their monitoring station throughout the attack and its immediate aftermath. At some point on December 7th or early December 8th, his personnel evacuated the facility, possibly on Morrison's orders to seek safety, possibly on their own initiative. During the chaos, Morrison remained at his post. He continued to attempt communication with higher headquarters and maintained his unit's records. At some point, the facility's external sealing mechanism activated. Engineering analysis revealed what happened next. The sealing mechanism was designed to activate automatically if certain conditions were met, specifically if the facility's entrance was exposed to explosion effects, pressure wave, or fire. The attack on Pearl Harbor created these conditions in many areas. And even though Morrison's facility was not directly targeted, blast effects from nearby explosions could have triggered the automatic sealing system. Once sealed, the only way to open the facility from inside was the emergency release valve, which was absent due to the November maintenance work. Archival research at the National Archives revealed additional context. A December 9, 1941 message from the Office of Naval Intelligence to Pacific Fleet Headquarters, classified until 2017, ordered immediate sealing of all classified signals, intelligence facilities to prevent compromise during potential enemy ground invasion. The message specified that facilities should be sealed by any available means and that personnel should evacuate before sealing. Whether this order reached Morrison's facility before the automatic sealing occurred, or whether it arrived too late, could not be determined from available evidence. The fate of Morrison's personnel remained unclear. Station Hotel's manning document showed a complement of 12 personnel. Morrison plus 11 enlisted men. None of the enlisted men appeared on Pearl Harbor casualty lists. Post-war research by naval historians attempting to trace the unit's personnel found that most had been reassigned to other duties in late December 1941 and served throughout the war. However, none left any record of their service at Station Hotel. They had been sworn to secrecy, and they took that secret to their graves. They had been debriefed and ordered not to discuss their previous assignment. Several were interviewed in the 1990s as part of declassification research, and their accounts confirmed they had evacuated the facility during the chaos of December 7th to 8th. Assuming Morrison would follow, reconstruction of Morrison's final hours required careful integration of physical evidence, documents, and contextual understanding of the facility's design. The morning of December 7th found Morrison and his crew at their underground post monitoring Japanese naval communications. When the attack began, they had no direct knowledge of what was occurring. They were physically isolated from the surface, relying on radio communications for information about the outside world. Morrison's log entries from that morning showed he understood an attack was underway based on monitoring U.S. military radio frequencies, but he had no way to assess the damage or determine appropriate action. Morrison's decision to remain at his post while sending his personnel to the surface reflected standard Navy doctrine. The commanding officer remains at his duty station until properly relieved or until remaining becomes impossible. His log entries indicated he believed the attack might be a prelude to an invasion and that Signals intelligence would be crucial for tracking Japanese forces. He ordered his personnel to evacuate while he maintained monitoring operations. He expected to follow once he completed essential tasks, securing classified materials, destroying sensitive equipment if necessary, and ensuring all intelligence collected during the attack reached headquarters. The facility's automatic sealing system activated sometime late on December 7th or early December 8th. Morrison's log showed he became aware the facility was sealed when he attempted to exit and found the entrance tunnel blocked. The exact timing of the sealing remained uncertain, but engineering analysis suggested it occurred between 1800 hours on December 7th and 0600 hours on December 8th. Morrison's log entries from December 8th showed increasing concern as he realized the facility was sealed and the emergency release was not functioning. Morrison attempted multiple courses of action. He tried to establish radio communication with the surface, but the facility's communications equipment was configured for receiving and transmitting on naval frequencies. He received no response to his emergency calls, either because surface facilities were too damaged to monitor, or because his signals were lost in the chaos of military traffic following the attack. He searched for tools that might allow him to force the entrance seal, but the facility had been designed specifically to resist forced opening from inside or outside. He attempted to attract attention by creating noise. The log mentioned pounding on walls and ceiling, though sound transmission through 60 centimeters of concrete and several meters of earth made this ineffective. By the evening of December 8th, Morrison's log entries showed awareness that he was in critical danger. The air quality had deteriorated noticeably. He described headaches, difficulty concentrating, and drowsiness. His writing became progressively less controlled, suggesting impaired cognitive function consistent with hypoxia and carbon dioxide poisoning. The log's final entry represented his last conscious effort to document his situation. Death probably occurred within a few hours. Morrison simply fell unconscious at his desk and never woke. Why was the facility never found during the 1941 searches? Multiple factors contributed. First, the facility's location was classified and the classification system had fragmented during the attack's chaos. People who knew where it was could not communicate with people who had authority to conduct searches. Second, the facility was designed to be invisible from the surface with no markers and all equipment underground. Third, the automatic sealing system had been designed to perfectly blend the entrance with surrounding terrain once activated. Fourth, the search party in December 1941 lacked the technical information they needed. They were looking for surface structures or obvious entrances, not sealed underground chambers. The most disturbing revelation from the investigation involved the timeline of official knowledge. Documents recovered from Naval intelligence archives showed that by late December 1941, senior intelligence officers had concluded Morrison was probably sealed in his facility and likely dead. However, mounting a rescue effort required revealing the facility's location and purpose to construction personnel and others without sufficient security clearances. Intelligence officers debated the appropriate course of action through January 1942. They ultimately concluded that Morrison was almost certainly dead by that point and that compromising the facility's security, even posthumously, posed unacceptable risks. They decided to leave the facility sealed, declare Morrison killed in action, and remove all location information from accessible files. Commander James Morrison died alone, sealed in a concrete tomb beneath Pearl Harbor. While the Navy he served concluded that secrecy mattered more than recovery of his body, the decision that led to his death, removing a critical safety mechanism for repair and not completing that repair before the attack, represented the kind of mundane administrative failure that characterizes military operations. The decision that left him there after his death represented something else. A calculated determination that institutional Secrecy justified abandoning one of their own, the Discovery Forces? Reconsideration of how institutions value their personnel. Morrison spent his final hours doing exactly what his training and duty required. Maintaining his post, attempting to complete his mission, following protocols. Even as hope faded, the Navy repaid that dedication by filing away evidence of his actual fate and allowing his family to believe he died in combat rather than through institutional failure. How many similar cases remain hidden in classified files, their stories deemed too embarrassing or too complex to acknowledge. For those studying Pearl Harbor, Morrison's case adds a footnote to the familiar narrative of ships burning and aircraft destroyed. The attack's casualties included not just those killed by Japanese bombs and bullets, but at least one officer who died because security procedures and bureaucratic failures converged in a perfect storm of negligence. The concrete chamber beneath Pearl Harbor, empty now except for the evidence of what occurred there, stands as a monument to a kind of sacrifice that receives no memorials. Death not in dramatic combat, but in administrative darkness. Forgotten by design rather than by accident, Commander. Morrison's story reminds us that sometimes the greatest tragedies in war are not caused by enemies, but by the very institutions sworn to protect their own. His sealed tomb beneath Pearl Harbor stands as a silent witness to a truth no one wanted to. Acknowledge that bureaucracy and secrecy can be as deadly as any weapon, and that some heroes die twice. Once in the darkness of their tomb and again in the silence of official records.